My name is Eddie Chavis, and this is my journey of faith.
Hello, we'd like to welcome you to Journey of Faith today. My name is Reverend Charlotte Edwards, and we believe that we have an excellent testimony from a young man that the devil tried to take out. But God had his hand on his life, and God's got his hand on your children's lives and your grandchildren and members of your family. So as you listen to Eddie Chavis tell his journey of faith today, I believe that you're going to be inspired that it's never over, that God's invisible hand is working behind the scenes on the behalf of your loved ones. So listen today. I know you'll be blessed as you do.
I was a little kid growing up in North Carolina, small town, Goldsboro, North Carolina is where I grew up. And growing up in that area was rough. Obviously, you had your poverty in certain areas. There was also certain areas where, a lot of more wealthy people lived. We also had an Air Force base there, but usually the way you got around was, riding your bike and everything as a little kid. For me, I had my set of friends that I hung out with, and our biggest thing was playing basketball, and we did the school thing as well. School was one of those things that was kind of easy for me, so that wasn't really a hard part of my life. Growing up, both of my parents were, in my life, and church was a big thing in our life. As I grew up in a Baptist church in the South, so you can only imagine that, we go to church every day during the week. Monday was something, then you had Bible studies, then you had choir practice for me, choir practice for my mom, then you had usher practice. Church that's just a big thing in our life. It's something that we always did. So I always knew about God, but it's a difference with knowing God and just kind of knowing about him. For me as a little kid, we all knew about God. They always preached into you that, this is wrong and this is right and this is sinning and this is how you should live your life. And for me, everything was pretty much good until about the age of 6. As you can imagine, growing up in the projects, you don't really have too much to do, except for playing with your friends and stuff like that. But for me, when I was 6, my dad left for the first time. And that was a tough time for me because I really didn't know what was going on and why he was leaving. As most kids, when parents split, one of the biggest things is maybe I'm the problem. And it kind of went back and forth for maybe a year or two. He would come back and then he would leave again, and I used to see my parents argue all the time, and things would get physical sometimes, and that was a tough role for me because my brother and my sister are 11 and 12 years older than me, so it was really at that point in time when I was 6, it was just me in the house. They were in college. And I used to always have to feel like I had to be the man, defend my mom, but then I really loved my dad. And then when the divorce, kind of became final, it was just one of those things where, I just felt like I was all on my own. Growing up, my mom had to, do what she needed to do to take care of us, and she worked 3 jobs. So I was obviously home by myself a lot. And, you know, one of the sayings is, idle mind is the devil's playground. So obviously I had so much time on my hands that, you know, I kind of got into things that I shouldn't get into. The streets was one of those things where, you know, I just kind of went to. Like, we were outside all the time anyway. At that point in time, and you know, that age, growing up in elementary and middle school, it wasn't really things that I got into yet. You know, it was just really hanging out with your friends and playing basketball. But it was things kind of started to pick up after the divorce when I was in school. Before 5th grade, I had transferred or been kicked out of 9 different schools. So as you can imagine, that was tough on my mom. You know, it was tough on me. You know, it's the questions of, you know, why or what's going on. Some of the stuff was behavior issues. But when I was in 1st grade was when I kind of had my first encounter growing up down south, as you can imagine, with, you know, racism and different things like that. But it was kind of my first encounter of being labeled as a kid. I remember I was taking a test in 1st grade class, and, you know, I raised my hand to ask a question to the teacher. And under her breath, she said, "Dumb N-word." And when I heard her, I got so extremely mad that my first reaction was I just picked up a chair and I threw it at her. Now, granted, looking back, I realized that was wrong, and I realized that was something that, you know, I shouldn't have done, but that was kind of my natural reaction. And, you know, so I went to the principal's office, and they called my parents, and, you know, I told my mom what happened. I told them what the teacher said and how I was so upset, but they were really focusing on the fact of what my reaction was, that they labeled me as a bad kid. And, you know, for me, just hearing that, I kind of started to take that on. You know, this is who I am, this is what I am. And even though I felt as though I did the right thing, I got labeled as that. And I feel like that label was one of the things that kind of set me off on a, you know, downward spiral through my elementary and middle school years. So kind of moving forward to middle school days, 7th grade was when I kind of started really picking up into things I really shouldn't be doing, hanging out places where I shouldn't have really been hanging out at. 7th grade, when I was 12, was the time that I actually lost my virginity for the first time. And for me, that was a big thing. I mean, it kind of set off a crazy spiral. I began to become sexually active, you know, a lot from that time point all the way until my college years. And then moving forward next year, 8th grade was the first time I started doing drugs. So I kind of started to live this lifestyle that, you know, I saw that was glorified on TV. I saw that, you know, that my friends did. This kind of was my reality. This was normal for me. School was one of the things I didn't really have to worry about. That was the easy part for me. So as most parents go, you know, as long as you got your schoolwork done, you know, you have free time to do whatever you want. And for me, as long as my homework was done, I was always, you know, going outside the house. So hanging out with my friends was one of the biggest things that we always did. And then, you know, it kind of moved from just being little kids outside on the street playing basketball to moving, you know, to now you doing other stuff, you know, smoking weed and playing basketball, hanging out with girls, sneaking in girls' houses, sneaking girls into your house. And these were things that I knew were wrong, but at that time, for me, that was just my life. You know, that's what everybody else did. In the small town I grew up in, I mean, that's really all you ever did. And then moving over to high school, things kind of started, you know, to pick up. When I was a kid, I was kind of first introduced to drugs for the first time. You know, we were outside playing basketball. I was 8 years old. And one of the guys that kind of hung out on the corner, you know, he knew my older brothers and older sister, my older brother and my older sister. And, you know, he said, "Yo, Eddie, I need you to, you know, do something for me." And I said, "All right, you know what?" You know, I was hanging out with my friends. He was like, "If you take this bag down the street and around the corner, I'll give you $5. And for me as a kid growing up, you know, $5, I was like, yo, that's a lot of money. You know, I could buy a lot of penny candy with that. I can go to the corner store and buy stuff for everybody. You know, so of course, you know, as a natural reaction, if anybody says, "I'll give you money if you do something," and for me, I didn't care what was in the bag. And that was one of the biggest things. He said, you know, just don't look in the bag. And I was like, okay. So I took it around the corner, and that kind of became a thing. You know, every now and then he would say, Eddie, I need you to run this down the street or across the street. And, you know, those $5 for me were adding up, and, you know, this was just easy money for me. But then one day, he told me to run something down the street, and as most kids do, you know, when somebody tells you not to do something, you know, you kind of start to think, you know, well, I kind of want to see what's in this bag. And that was the first time I opened up the bag and I realized that what I was doing was I was running drugs down the street. So I guess that's what you would call nowadays as a runner. And it really didn't change me any. And now that I look back on it, you know, that was really a defining moment in my life, because to realize that you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, or doing something that could be so detrimental to your future, and thinking it's okay, you know, I kind of knew that I became this different person. So when 9th grade hit, you know, I reached back out to a couple people that I knew, and, you know, as most high schoolers, they want to have their own money, they want to, you know, do their own thing. So drugs was something that I went to. You know, I had already started, you know, using and smoking weed every now and then and hanging out with my friends. So I began to think, you know, selling wouldn't be no big deal. You know, I didn't know people that, you know, got locked up for selling drugs and different things like that. So I didn't think that would be anything that would happen to me. One of the biggest things that I can say about that time is it kind of goes back to the Bible verse of Proverbs 22:6. And, you know, as we all know, that's the train up a child in the way they should go, so when they get older, they won't depart. But for me, the message kind of defined my life and how I grew up. It says, point a kid in the right direction, dash, so that when they're older, they won't be lost. And for me, I was a lost kid. So that lost part kind of stands out to me, because I really was on a course for disaster, going nowhere, which, as you know, is either two ways. So for me, that verse kind of defines the whole evolution of who Eddie Chavis is from the beginning. And then the dash in there, most people kind of look at that as it's just something that's there. But for me, I look at that as your beginning and your end as an individual. Where you were first born to the time that you die, and that dash symbolizes the course of your life. So the things that I've done, the places that I've been, 8th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, doing drugs, selling drugs, having sex. We all have that dash, but then if you move on to the end of it, so when they're old, they won't be lost. So I always knew who God was. I always knew that he was there, but I don't think I ever really had a relationship with him. So it wasn't until my 9th grade year that my sister, she was living in Maryland, and she got married, and they had moved to Delaware, and we came up here. Me and my mom came up here to help her, you know, move her stuff and move in, and my older brother. My brother said, you know, well, Eddie, have you, you know, ever thought about, you know, not living in North Carolina, moving up here and moving this way? And for me, I'm like, nah, like I got my friends, you know, I got, you know, my grandparents who were down there that I was really close to, girlfriends and things like that. So, and for me, North Carolina was all I knew. There was nothing really outside of those walls that intrigued me to, you know, pick up my stuff and go. But my brother and my mom were talking about it, and then the idea was thrown around that, you know, why don't you, you know, move in with your sister? Why don't you move in with Ted? And I'm in the back seat thinking, like, can y'all please stop talking about this? Like, I'm not trying to go anywhere. So the idea was kind of became a reality when, you know, my mom, you know, kind of set it up with my sister and me moving up to North Carolina. And for me, like, I love my sister. You know, I knew who she was, but as you can imagine, when you're 12 years older than somebody and, you know, when they're 6 and you're in college, you don't really know too much about them. So it was kind of like I knew she was my sister, but I really didn't know too much about her. And at the time, at that point, she was in her mid-20s. I mean, she had just had a child. So that was a big step. But I mean, obviously I agreed. I didn't really have a choice or a say in the matter. And I moved out with my sister to Delaware. And I think for me, that was the biggest defining moment that I ever had in my life. Because I think that was the time that my life changed forever. The transition was hard though. Coming up here in 10th grade, the transition was hard. Me and my sister kind of used to go at it from time to time, just learning the personalities and kind of getting to know each other. but also it was different. You know, I'm moving from hearing police sirens and dogs barking and, you know, people chasing people and kids outside playing to, you know, moving to Middletown, Delaware, where you just hear birds chirping in the morning and you can hear crickets and everything. So for me, that was tough. You know, I had a lot of sleepless nights. You know, you just wake up and kind of go outside and, you know, there's no corner stores, there's nowhere to really walk through. At that time, Middletown just had a Food Lion that was like 4 miles away. So it was tough. It was tough. I mean, the high school was there, but that was really it. So at that point in time, I really had nothing to really go to except for go back to my, you know, first love, which was basketball. I played basketball in Middletown, and I began to get friends and, you know, meet girls and have, you know, have girlfriends and different things like that. But then there was a moment when my junior year in high school where I wanted to go to church. You know, that was something that my sister and my brother-in-law really didn't do, and I hadn't been to church since I was down in North Carolina. So I took it upon myself to, you know, visit churches. And I kind of felt like it was something in my life that I was missing and a void that needed to be filled. Because like I said, I knew who God was, but I didn't really have a relationship with him. I knew he was always there for me, but I really didn't know that much about him. So I found a couple different churches, and I used to go from time to time. You know, it turned into like one Sunday a month, and then one Sunday a month turned into 2 Sundays a month, and then next thing you know, I'm joining a church, and you know, I'm going regularly, and I kind of begin to, you know, feel happy again. You know, me and my sister had a good relationship. Me and my mom's relationship was becoming a little better. I was, you know, seeing my, you know, kind of helping her raise my nieces and nephews. But then I also kind of started getting back into things that I was doing down in North Carolina. The sex was a big thing for me. You know, senior year was kind of when I started doing drugs again. Not all the time, but occasionally. And I kind of felt myself, you know, backsliding and moving back into a past life. College came, church was a thing that I kind of lost again. You know, living on a college campus, you know, you got your classes and friends and parties every weekend, drinking, doing drugs. That's your lifestyle, that's what you do. So I kind of started to fall back again. I got into a really tough relationship that was a lot of, you know, physical and, you know, verbal things that I shouldn't have been doing, and I believe that had a lot to do with falling away from the church. I was a senior in high school when I met my, I guess you would say, quote unquote, quote, first real girlfriend. She was a sophomore in college, so obviously there was an age gap, and you know, we would stay together a lot of times. I would stay with her family a lot of times, especially being in college and you know, after high school, and our relationship kind of really started to pick up, and you know, we really started to do a lot of things that we shouldn't have been doing. And then that was a tough time for me too, because there was a lot of times where we broke up and our relationship was on and off again. One of the times where we broke up that was really tough was moving into the beginning of my college years. I was going to, it was probably about 2 weeks before freshman orientation. We had gotten a big, huge fight. And it was kind of one of those moments where I kind of started to think, like, you know, what is this life that I'm living? Like, why am I waking up doing this every day? You know, why is this something that I want to continue to keep doing? And I kind of started to have suicidal thoughts. And one of the biggest moments was when I was at my mom's house, and nobody was there but just me. And like I said, idle mind is the devil's playground. And he kind of started to, you know, talk to me like, what are you doing this for? Like, you so unhappy, you unhappy in your relationship, you know, you unhappy with your sister and your brother, you know, my mom had moved back up to Delaware, so I was living with her, you know, for the time being before college. We're starting to argue more and more again, and I was just done with life. So I went in the kitchen, I picked up a kitchen knife, and, you know, I started to cut myself. And I remember calling my brother and my sister and, you know, yelling at them, screaming, like, asking them, like, why should I live? Why should I keep doing this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't even have a relationship like that. My mom, we argue all the time. you know, my dad, he's still not in my life, you know, from a little kid. And I was just like, what's the purpose of it? When you have times where you're hurting and you don't have, and you feel like everything is lost and there's nobody that can give you a direct answer. Because even talking to my brother and my sister and my mom when I was on the phone with them, like, I felt like I really didn't even get anything from them to why I should still be living. But it was a crazy moment. It was a crazy moment for me because one of them had wound up calling the police, and they rushed in the house and they put me in handcuffs. And for me, it was tough because at that point in time, you know, my niece, you know, she was a little older, and me and her relationship was like brother and sister. And, you know, her seeing me going out in handcuffs was tough. It was something I never wanted her to envision and imagine, but when they took me away, and, you know, I was gone for a week, and, you know, I kind of had that time to kind of sit and rethink life and where I had, you know, lost myself. And I remember vividly being, you know, in this place that they had me. I had a roommate that the night when I first got there, I woke up and he hung himself from his bed sheets. And, you know, seeing a dead body was tough. You know, it was tough because I felt like I knew what I wanted to do, and then I actually saw somebody that went through with it. And then I knew that wasn't what I wanted. That wasn't the way I wanted to go out. That wasn't how I wanted to be remembered. So I was in there for a week, and I had some time to, you know, kind of get myself together, and I started to get back in church, and, you know, I found another church that I wanted to go to, and, you know, I went from time to time, but I was still, you know, doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. So I was kind of in that stage where, you know, the devil was still pulling me. I was still trying to go to church, but then he would still try to pull me again. And I still felt like I was lost. But I think that was the first time where I really contemplated, you know, harming myself. That was the last time I contemplated harming myself. But also that was the first time that the devil kind of started to realize that he was losing me. For me, that kind of started a chain reaction of times that I realized that the devil really tried to take my life. Because after that moment, in 2006, I went back home to homecoming. A lot of my friends went to North Carolina A&T, and you know, I always went down there and hung out with them on the homecoming days, on homecoming weekends. And there was this party we left, and I was driving, and I was driving my friend's car, and, you know, we had me and a couple of my other boys in the back seat, and we were at a stoplight. And I didn't know that they had issues with anybody, and a car pulled up beside us and shot the car up. And luckily, you know, one person was shot, but I was fine. But after that moment, I was just like, all right, I'm doing something wrong, because things just always started to happen. And that was the first time I had ever went home, and I knew that this was a life that I left behind me, and I had to do that. I had to leave it behind me. Like, I even had my friends from back home telling me, like, the time that you left was the perfect timing, man. Because when I left, you know, gangs kind of started to pick up more. Crips and Bloods had kind of started seeping into the area where I grew up at. People were getting shot and killed more and more. And, you know, they said, like, you're really doing something for yourself. Like, you're kind of one of the people that made it out. And if you know anything about Goldsboro, North Carolina, if you make it out from there, you know, people look at you as, you know, you made it. You know, you're one of the special ones. I remember calling my sister that night, telling her, I need a plane ticket back now. Like, this ain't for me. And once I got back, you know, I started, you know, I joined the church where I was going all the time. I started really getting back in the Word. Me and my girlfriend, that relationship had kind of, you know, went a separate ways. So I'm back, you know, single in a dating life. I remember also February 14th of 2006, I was picked up a girl. You know, we were going to the movie, we were supposed to be going on a date. It was kind of, you know, it was snowing that night, so the roads were kind of icy. I remember coming to the stoplight over by People's Plaza, and I lost control of my car, and my car spun out, and we flew underneath the 18-wheeler. And I had no seatbelt on, and I flew in the back seat, and my head hit the glass. And I remember, I just remember hitting it and then losing all feeling. I was in a coma for 3 days. When I came to, they kind of, told me what happened, and, the girl was okay. My car was totaled. My mom was real worried about me, and I couldn't say anything but thank you, God. Like I knew He was always there. I began to start getting a relationship with Him, and when the devil feels like he's losing you, he's gonna try every single thing he can do to take you out. So that began to come more real to me. And it began to come more real to me because I believe because at the same time that last accident happened, that was also the time that, I met my girlfriend in college, who is now my wife. And, me and Jana, we began to, date, and, we were partying, not really going to church like that because I transferred to another school. But then when she graduated in 2009, I was still in school, and, she kind of was like, I heard about this church called Seeds of Greatness. And, my brother was telling me about it. She was like, I think we should go. And, I really didn't know anything about it. And for me, I grew up in a Baptist church, and it was a smaller church. But moving here, or not moving here, but coming to Seeds of Greatness, I remember walking through the doors and walking in the sanctuary, and I'm like, the people were nice, everybody smiling and, saying, speaking to you. But I just remember looking around, and I'm just like, yo, this church is huge. Like, it's so many people in here. Like, it was a little overwhelming. And I wasn't really sure about it. And that was kind of, I remember talking to her and saying, like, I'm not sure if, I want to go here before we came, because, I heard that it was a big church. And that was kind of one of the things that kind of held me back. I was used to always, having a relationship with, my pastor growing up, and, him knowing who I am and knowing who my family is. But I remember sitting in the church service, and I forgot what he was preaching on at that time. But, like they always say, like, I felt like he was talking to me. Like, I really did. And I felt like he was talking to me without knowing me, without looking at me. But I just felt connected to a sermon. I felt connected to him as an individual. And I remember introducing myself and shaking my hand, and, we began to come more and more. I remember one time, a Saturday before, we were going to be coming to church. I was taking Jana to work, and we were driving. It had just finished raining, and our car spun. It spun on Route 1, and we flew into a ditch. Luckily, our car was fine, and we were fine, but, like I said, the devil continued to keep trying to take me out. and he definitely wanted to, ruin our relationship too, because we had found a church that we liked. We were, actually reading the Bible together and doing things together. We joined the church in 2010, and it was another big defining moment in my life. I think that was one of the things that kind of defined my adult life and kind of helped me grow up. I remember sitting in the, new members class, and this was when obviously the church was big, but, at that time it was smaller than it is now. I remember, Sister Lisa saying, tell us about, why you joined and where you came from. And the only thing I could say, I was listening to him in church service one day, and he's a bad boy. He was preaching a bad sermon. And that's one thing I can say, that every time I came to church, like, the pastor never let me down. Like, he always gave me something I needed. He was always saying something that, I either went through in my life or that I was going through in my life. And even those times where, you kind of come to church and you feel like the sermon may not be pertaining to you, like, it was just still good. Like, it was still something that fed me. And, I kind of started to getting into church more, not just, being somebody that shows up on Sundays, but coming on Wednesdays and, doing things and joining and like, kind of trying to, talk to different ministries and actually reaching out and talking to people. Seeds of Greatness was one of those things that, wasn't a church anymore. It kind of became a part of who I am. It kind of became my family. Um, and while I was here, you know, it was kind of still tough though, because I feel like that battle between, you know, God and the devil was still going on. Because things were still happening outside of church, you know, in my life and, you know, me and my girlfriend's life. Like, we're trying to, you know, we're these college kids and, you know, these kids that are in our 20s, you know, trying to really live life right and, you know, go to church, but you continue to keep having these moments happening, and you have your thoughts of like, yo, why does this keep happening? Like, you know, I just want to quit. Like, this is too much. Cause you know, I had gotten in a car accident. First day working at a job, and I was working at the Boys and Girls Club, and they were showing me around, how we picked the kids up, and a dart bus came out of nowhere and T-boned us. Our car had slid again, and, you know, we had gotten in a car accident. And then, you know, one big thing, you know, we went on vacation. We went on vacation, and, we were stranded at sea, you know, for 45 minutes. You know, we went on a scuba diving trip. We were stranded at sea at 45 minutes, and I mean, that was a scary moment. Like, stranded at sea, you have no air in your tank. You know, I gave my girlfriend, who's now my wife, you know, my air tank, just so she could, you know, feel comfortable and keep breathing. Which I think that was a moment where I found out I was gonna marry her, because that was a lot of love when you give somebody else your air. But, you know, thank God, you know, somebody found us, because, you know, not being able to see no land or no boat, that did something to you. So we had so many things continue to start happening, you know, when we were joining Seeds of Greatness and trying to get involved. But I mean, that brings me to now. You know, one of the biggest things I can say is that, you know, I'm still standing. God has blessed us, because now the place that we joined was the place that, you know, we got married. Now it was the place that we got more involved and joined the ministries. And, you know, the pastor and Sister Lisa have looked at us as being leaders, and now we're leaders of evolution, and we have a group of kids where, you know, we can change their lives. We can be, you know, those people that I didn't have growing up. And that's huge, because I feel as though now, you know, even going to college and graduating in sports management, like, that's something that I don't do. I work with kids. You know, I'm a behavior interventionist. I work with kids on an everyday basis, and I'm intervening in all of these kids' lives and helping them to grow and become better individuals, and telling them my life stories, and so they don't fall into the same traps. And it's something that I take very seriously, because a lot of our kids are still lost. You know, they're lost kids, just like how I was. And, you know, they have their parents, and their parents are trying to talk to them, but we know how that goes. You know, you hear the things that you want to hear. You think your parents don't know everything, or they don't know what you're going through or what you're dealing with. So I love being that person to be there and kind of help guide them through life. You know, I feel like me and my wife, we're pouring out into these kids, and, you know, that has transpired into our life, because now we have a child of our own. And, you know, she's young, you know, she's 3 now, and, you know, we want to surround her around people that are going to pour into her. And we hope that, you know, not only we have the relationship like we have with other kids, we want to have that relationship with her, but we also want her to have, you know, those good influences in her life where people can, you know, pour into her when there's times that she feels as though she can't talk to us. And, you know, that's big for me, because I feel as though the reason why I do what I do is because I want my kids to be blessed. And I feel as though the fact that I can, you know, help other kids out and, you know, help lead them through life, that'll trickle down to my kids as well. Currently, you know, I'm working as a behavior interventionist in the middle school now. I've been there for about 4 years. I'm also coaching basketball, which I've been doing since I was 17, but now I'm coaching, you know, still coaching at the high school level. This year was the first year that I got my first varsity coaching job at Hassan-Voltec High School. I have a good core of people around me, you know, helping me, and you know, I'm really just taking my, you know, my life to the next level, and, you know, of where I want to go. We're doing great as a family, and, you know, I feel like we're still, you know, growing in the Lord and growing in church. And one of the big things I want to leave off with is something that was really huge in my life when I found it. And it's something that I think all of us as human beings just need to remember, because our biggest purpose in life is to help, as Christians, is to, help each other. John Acuff said, sometimes God redeems your story by surrounding you around with people that need to hear your past so it doesn't become their future. And for me, that is just amazing, because everybody has a story. And, I am the book of Eddie Chavis. You are the book of whoever you are. And your chapters go on. Every single day you wake up, you're writing in the book. And it's up to you whether you want it to be a happy ending or not. And you have to understand that, you want to live life for God, and you want to be a better individual, and you want to grow, and you want to advance in life. But every single day you're writing in that book. And you have to remember that the stories that you're writing, somebody's going to be reading this. And the stories that you're, and the chapters that you're writing, maybe a chapter that saves somebody's life, or maybe a chapter that, helps a family stay together, or maybe a chapter that, may speak to a younger person that you're around. So you have to always remember to make sure that you're writing important stuff in your book. And I mean, we're all not perfect individuals. We're all going to have our chapters that we wish we could, get rid of, but that makes up the book of who you are.
Hello, I'm Robert Hawkins, Senior Counsel at Hawkins Counsel Group. We're a full-service law firm with a focus on excellence and service to our clients. Our practice areas include intellectual property, which includes patents, trademarks, and copyrights. We handle both commercial and residential real estate transactions. We help you with your business formation for both for-profit and not-for-profit entities. We do estate planning, including wills, trusts, medical directives, and power of attorney. Our practice also includes licensing, contracts, mediation, and more. Even if you're not sure we handle your area of need, give us a call. We will access our network of attorneys on your behalf. Call us anytime at 302-635-1511. That's 302-635-1511. Or visit our website at hawkinscounselgroup.com.
I'm sure that you were just really impressed with Eddie Chavis's testimony, a testimony of the love of God that kept drawing him and drawing him. There's a verse in John 6:44 that says, except the Lord, he attracts, he draws, he pulls. And then the desire of the Lord comes to them, to serve them. And that's exactly what happened to Eddie. He had many difficulties. He made bad choices. He didn't have the perfect home life, but he kept knowing on the inside that there was a God. And as a result of going to church, he was able to find God and find this purpose for his life. And that's so, so important that you link up with your local church. Because as you link up with your local church, you'll be taught the truth, and the truth will set you free. The truth of God's word, it will empower you to be an overcomer. It will give you purpose. It will give you God's will. And as a result of that, the Holy Spirit will be able to enlighten you, impart into your heart exactly what God has for your life. So we're so thrilled that Eddie and his wife Jenna have become members of our church. They're ministering to our young people. They're doing great and mighty things. And again, don't give up. Don't quit where your loved ones are concerned. God's hand is upon them. In fact, it tells us in Chronicles that the eyes of the Lord, they're running to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong on the behalf of those whose hearts are towards him. So we encourage you, come to church. Seeds of Greatness is a great church. I know there's other churches, but we encourage you that you will know the truth at Seeds, and that truth will set you free and put your life on a solid rock, Christ Jesus. So thanks for joining us today. Come on out to church. We'd love to meet you. God bless you.